Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video by the Obsidian Collective. I'm Alex, and I'm the host of this system, or one of the hosts, and we got a new blanket behind us, so in case anyone was wondering, we got this Ponyo blanket, and we hung it up, and it's awesome. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Today I'm here to talk about something that I ranted about on stream, because I streamed yesterday, and if you're interested in ever catching one of our streams, our Twitch is twitch.tv/the Obsidian Collective, and we talk about DID a lot on our streams, but we mainly play video games while talking about it. But I talked about professionals and their treatment against systems, and how disheartening it is as a system to experience the way professionals will treat you. We recently went to a partial hospitalization program, and this was caused by the fact that we basically continuously was having breakdowns, to the point where Ace, our head protector, he basically put us into like a temporary holding like psych ward area in a hospital. We weren't like completely admitted, but we were admitted to the point where it was like an acute mental health unit, but it wasn't a extended stay. It was just for like a day or two, and that was caused by the fact that we were not doing very good mentally, which caused us to interact with a lot of mental health professionals for them to, talk to us and see if we are okay to be out in, we're not going to hurt ourselves and stuff like that. And they pretty much pretty quickly was like, okay, you're good, like you're fine. And so they discharged us pretty quickly, but they decided that the best course of action for us was to go to a partial hospitalization program. And we've done this before. We've done a partial program before, a few years ago. This was actually, the last time we did it was kind of like the catalyst that made me realize that we were a system, because I kept going to the partial programs and having Ace talk to me, and I would be really confused, and I would draw him, and I would try and explain to them, like, yeah, I'm experiencing like seeing and talking to Ace, but I didn't say that well. It was very much like, I don't know what's going on, and he, like, that pretty much brought upon me going, I think we're a system. That's not the entirety of it. It went into the back of my head, but I pushed it to the side, and then the rest is history. When I later then discovered it, which I'll probably make a video talking about it, but this was our second time in the partial program, like 2 years after our first time, and we're aware of us being a system, and we are very open with mental health professionals about it, because we want to make sure that they understand that, and also because it affects us so much. It's such a big part of our mental health that I feel like they need to know. Like, they ask you about, like, oh, do you have depression? Do you, like, struggle with self-harming, eating disorders, all of that. And they want to know that. So I try to be very straightforward, like, yes, we have DID. And unfortunately, most professionals will go silent the way, like, an average person who doesn't know much about DID will, and it's really disheartening, because you expect for the professional to be the person to know what you are going through, and you expect to find a sense of comfort in them knowing what the heck is happening to you. But when it comes to DID, it's like they don't know. It's like it feels like no one knows except other systems, and it's really frustrating. In the partial program, we had multiple sessions where we were talking about stigma, and I tried to be open about it, um, about the stigma that you face with DID, because it's like one of the most heavy stigmatized disorders, and even like the professionals in the room, like leading the group, they didn't know what to say. They just would go silent, and it was very frustrating, and it made me feel very alienated and alone. Um, but I was like, okay, that's fine. Like I'm used to it. But it was still sad that I wasn't experiencing that kind of safe space that I wanted to experience. But I was like, okay, that's fine. But then you have your own like personal case manager who is like kind of like your mini therapist, temporarily while you're in the program. And she was great, she was nice, but I was trying to explain to her that basically I'm a writer, and I've been writing since I was very young, and since I've been writing since I was very young, and DID stems from childhood trauma. I would write about my childhood trauma to cope with it. And I tried to explain this to her, and she basically stated some along the lines of, "Oh, if you write about your childhood trauma in like," and I write about it in a way that makes it like fantastical in order to cope with it, because a child's not just gonna write. I mean, a child could just write a diary very straight explaining what happened, but I'm a fiction writer, so I would write my trauma in a very like fictionalized world, like separate from it. And that's just the way derealization is. You know, you just like separate yourself from what was going on. Um, that's dissociation for you. And she took that as, oh, if you are creating these like fictional stories, well, semi-fictional because it's based on our trauma, then that must be the way your DID is. You must be making that up in order to like cope with stuff. And I just felt so offended by that because how can you say to someone as a mental health professional, you're making up what you're experiencing? You just have, it basically was her saying, I have an overactive imagination, and that is the reason that is what gets me through my trauma. But I have had so many conversations with alters basically trying to use that argument when I'm having a hard time and I'm like, no, I don't want to be in a system. And I go to other alters and I go, yeah, I'm making you up. It's just my imagination. They get so offended by that. And it just, so I got offended by that because it was like, no, like I've worked so hard to try and believe what I experience and not doubt it, because when I doubted it, it was worse for me. When I doubted it, the communication between us was worse, and everything was just worse. And for a mental health professional themselves to just completely invalidate what I was experiencing and not even ask me further questions about what I experienced, it was so frustrating and infuriating. And I understand that like a lot of mental health professionals are seeing an uptick in people with DID based on like TikTok and stuff. But that doesn't mean that if you have someone coming to you being like, yes, I have DID, you should completely just go, no, you don't, because it's a trend right now. Because it's, people still have DID, you know? Imitation DID is a problem right now, but like the stuff that I experience, you know, I've gone to so many professionals to get an answer, do I have DID or not? And they have said, yes, you have DID. I've taken the test, you know, I've done all my due diligence out of a desperation to not have this disorder because I don't want to have this disorder. And like I've made several videos on this channel talking about how hard it is to live with it because I'm not doing this I'm not having DID simply because I'm like, oh, it's all fun and rainbows. It's just imagination, unicorns. No, like, that is not why I have the disorder. I have the disorder because I went through extensive childhood trauma, which I didn't want to go through, and it causes me to have flashbacks. It debilitates me. I am terrified to go outside most of the time. Like, I just, it's not, it's not a matter of imagination, and so it was so hurtful to have a professional say that to me. And I wanted to come on here to talk about it because I've been experiencing it so much, and it's hurtful. I've had many therapists. It's really difficult to find a DID specialist, unfortunately, and I feel like I could avoid the experiences I have by seeing a DID specialist because they would know. But unfortunately, it's really difficult to find a DID specialist, and I've talked about that in the struggles of living with dissociative identity disorder video. I talked about how hard it is to find a therapist and a DID specialist. And so, because you don't see a DID specialist usually, because it's super hard to find one, you have to meet with therapists who don't know much about DID and therefore treat it in a very, I'd say, like, I don't want to say disrespectful way, but if that's the way it comes across. I've had ACE front end therapy, I've had other alters front end therapy, and it basically consists of the therapist or psychiatrist, because we've had this with psychiatrists as well, being upset that an alter is fronting, and not wanting to speak to them because they only want to speak to me because they only see the host as valid. And that's just not the way it works. That's not the way it works. And, like, all the parts of the system, they make up a whole, and you can't just completely be like, no, I'm only going to talk to the host, because that person with DID is never going to heal if you only want to communicate with the host and you only want to acknowledge what the host experiences. Because, like, there's trauma holders for a reason. There's different alters holding different pieces of trauma, and they need to work through that trauma in order to heal, and the host can't do that for them. That part has to do it, not the host. And so I don't know why so many therapists can't understand that concept. And it's beyond frustrating. I don't know if in, like, psychology, like, universities and colleges, if they just completely are teaching about DID in a way that's terrible and completely outdated and, like, unfathomable, or if they just aren't teaching anything at all. And if whatever the case is, I just feel like change needs to be made. But I always say that, and I feel like, what do we do? I've been wondering many a time, what do we do? Because I don't want to continuously experience stigma from the people who are supposed to be safe. If I'm experiencing fake claiming and stigma and just horrible comments from people who aren't mental health professionals, it's like, okay, they don't know much about, like, psychology, then maybe they never took a psychology course and they just aren't as knowledgeable. So, I can understand why they'd say more ignorant things. But when it comes to a mental health professional, you expect them to know, you expect them to be the professional in the mental health realm. So you expect them to know what you're experiencing and expect them to validate you and expect them to not tear you down the way outsiders do. So it's very frustrating that that is what we experienced. We've had a psychiatrist state, I had a psychiatrist one time, I was like, he was like, DID is a trauma disorder. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he was like, well, do you have trauma? And I was like, yes. And he was like, okay, we're gonna need to talk more about that. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, like let's talk more about it. Um, the next time we met, Ace fronted because Ace was like, well, I'm a trauma holder. I can talk about our trauma. Um, and the psychiatrist was like, no, I don't want to speak to you. I want to speak to Alex about it. And it's the whole thing was just gross because like Ace has like input that he can say that is very helpful. He knows more about our trauma than I do. Um, and he's going to be pretty helpful in that conversation. But since it's not me fronting, it's like they put a wall up. They're like, no, not you. I refuse to speak to you. And it just disturbs me inside. I want my alters to be treated like people, and I want them to be treated with respect. And you expect that from mental health professionals. Like, if no one else, at least I can go to a therapist and have them treat my alters uh, with kindness. And you don't even find that with mental health professionals. So, you know, what do we do? What do we do? Um, but that's just a short rant I wanted to go on. There was the whole situation with McLean Hospital and how those professionals basically were fake claiming people in online DID spaces and basically saying, if you're online and open about your DID, then you don't have DID. Because if you have DID, you should basically be afraid and too scared to talk about it, too scared to be open about it, and because of how horrible it is to live with. And that take is just so stupid. It is so laughable because why would you tell someone with DID to suffer in silence? That's basically what you're saying. Is, yeah, your DID is so bad, so horrible to live with. There's no way you would ever be open about it. There's no way you would ever talk about it openly and online. Um, and I can say right now, the experience of having DID is so intense and so, like, it takes over your whole life, and barely anybody understands. So it makes sense that people with DID would go to online spaces trying to seek that validation and trying to seek a safe space where others understand them, because you can't even find that with mental health professionals. So you kind of are grasping at straws. And, silence is a killer. When you suffer in silence, that leads to, suicide. And I just think it's horrible that they are basically fake claiming these systems for being open about it online. And like I talk about on this channel, I talk about how hard it is to live with DID, but I also talk about the other aspects of it. And you can talk about the horrible stuff and you can talk about the good stuff, because it's not completely bad. It's not completely good. Like, it is horrible to live with, but I also think to myself, Ace saved my life, and I would never say, I wish I never had Ace in my life. I wish I never had all these other alters in my life. And I definitely think that sometimes. But at the end of the day, they saved my life and they helped me with so much that that is an important thing. And that is huge. So I'm sorry if I didn't make much sense in this video. This is something I feel really passionate about, and I talked about it on stream. I might have talked about it more cohesively in that stream, or coherently, excuse me. And but yeah, I wish change would happen, and I hope change happens. But I think change doesn't happen unless we are open about it and talk about it, and that's why we have this channel, is to be open about it and talk about it. And I hope someone listens to this, and I hope it changes your mind or something, or you meet someone with the idea and you treat them and their alters with kindness that the mental health professionals don't afford. And if a mental health professional is listening to this, please do more due diligence and research on DID and open your worldview more into how to treat them with kindness, because it shouldn't be that only the host matters. Um, it shouldn't be like that, and you should treat alters like their own people, because that part is never going to heal if you treat them like they're not even real, you know? So, thank you to everyone who watched, and if you'd like to like the video or subscribe, we make videos about DID and Hellenic polytheism and other witchcraft stuff. Um, I'm usually the one making the videos, and if you have any questions, please leave them below. But thank you for watching. Drink water, take your meds, and maybe go sit out in the sun if you can. But love you.